Kindly provide a suitable answer before we discuss. What is a for loop? This is a loop used to iterate over a sequence and execute a block of code for each item in the sequence. For example, let's take into consideration our list of items 1, 2, 3, and 4. If we get ourselves a simple for loop for elements in L, print elements. If we run our code, you see, what does our definition say? It says it loops through the sequence and executes each block of code for each item in the sequence. So it takes our sequence, runs through it for any element in our sequence. It runs a particular code in it. So I can instead decide here, I want to print done. I run my code, that's it. I've printed done. Now, if I make it nested, what it means is I want to print for elements or for variable in this print done. Okay, run like this. Okay, I'm going to explain this very soon. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I'll call this list 1. I'm going to call this list 2. Now let's separate the elements. Let's give this one odd numbers. And we'll give this one even numbers. I'll say list 1, say list 2. I'm going to print the elements of list 1 and list 2 because I want you to see what's happening here. I'll print elements, then I'm going to just print list 2 variable. Get it here? Okay. I want you to look at the output here. Let's get back to our definition. What does it say? It says it loops through a sequence and executes a block of code for each item in the sequence. So normally we come here and we print elements, and then we come down here and we print what? Variable. It says it loops through and executes a block of code for each keyword, for each. So for this element, the first element executes any block of code for each of them. So what it's saying is, if I take 1, I'm printing 1. It has to execute the block of code for 1 until it finishes executing before it goes to 3. I don't know if you're understanding. So if I print here element 1, it has to finish executing the block of code for just element 1. Executes all the block of code. No matter what I put under, it has to execute it. So that's just the concept of nested loops. When you talk about a nested loop, for example, it means that for any element in the parent loop, you execute any block of code, it finishes before you come back to the parent loop. So this is just the example of what happens here. So this is 1, right? As you can see, I have 1. It happens how many times? 4 times. Because this list 2 has 4 items. That is why it happens 4 times. Okay, so I've printed here elements. I've printed here the variable. It happens how many times? 4 times, because it says, okay, 1, 2, the first element of this 2, 1, 4, the second element of this 2, 1, 6, the third element of this 2, 1, 8, the fourth element of this 2. Now, here is where our first element comes to an end, because there's nothing again under this for loop to execute. So our first element comes to an end, and it gets now to the second element and does the same thing. So nested loops are actually just a loop in a loop, because what a loop does normally is that it prints what you have given it, executes the block of code you have given it under that particular item of that loop before it stops. So I don't know if you get the concept properly. So there are two things to take note of. We have the first element, or whatsoever element. It gets the element first. Okay, it says for elements in this 1. Let's just say I put here 1 only. I print. Are you seeing? It gives me 1 because it has run through just one element. If I put back all those elements here, all those elements are going to have the same sequence at each interval. I'm going to have 1, 1, 2, 1, 4, 1, 6, 1, 8. Then I'm going to have 3 here, second element, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 6, 3, 8. And I'm going to have 5 and 7 happening the same way, because I got an element and I have to execute all the code of that element first. So I have to finish executing the code of that element. So I have to run this for loop properly before I get to access the other elements of the for loop and run also their code in it. So just think about this for loop like a print statement, but it's a for loop. We think of it like a print statement. Print the element. So if I run it, it looks now easy because you just print 1, 3, 5, 7. But I just print one element. So it's actually the same thing that happens. It's just that we're having a loop inside here. So for each element, I have to execute this loop. For each element, I have to execute this loop. So okay, that's just the basic definition of it. Now let's go back to our question. Get this loop. Get it here. What does our question say? It says for I in range 3, for j in range 2, print I, j. From what I just taught you, I guess it's clearer, right? It's clearer. Clean. So what are we doing here? For I in range 3. We talk about range, you just have to put in mind. It's a normal list. We're taking from 0, 1, 2. We're stopping at 3. And here it's taken from 0, 1. Okay, so that's just it. So you say for I in range 3, we get I here, and we run this loop first. So for every element of I, we run this loop. So for 0, we run this loop. For 1, we run this loop. For 2, we run this loop. That is how nested functions work. So if I come and print here, you see what I was saying? For 0, we print 0, 1. For 1, we print 0, 1. For 2, we print 0, 1. And you can go in and in and in and in. You can go to the extent of saying for I or for V in range. Let's just give it a number that is not difficult. We'll just say for 1, we print IGV. or we can just give it, the element that's going to come out here normally is 0 only, because if for range, in the range to 1. So if you print here, I'll be seeing. So we say for I 0. For 0, I want 0, 0. For 0, I want 0, 1, 0. Because it comes here 0 first. It comes here and gives me J also. And what's the first element of J? The first element here is 0. The first element here is 0. The first element here is only 0. Okay. Now we have already stopped this loop here. Correct. We come back. We take our first I, which is what? It's 0. We are still inside here. We take our first element, which is 0. 0 here. We come back here, is 1. And we still have our 0 here to finish. Correct. Now 0 has finished elapsing everything inside here. Now we come back to 1. This is 1. We get our 1 here, we execute everything here. For 1 here, we come back to what? 0. Then we come back to what? 0. We'll finish here. We still get our 1 that is still there normally. And we print out this 1. And then we come here to 0. And it goes the same for 2. You come here 2. You have 0, the first element. You come here to 0. 2 see there, we have to execute everything about 2. 2 is there, so we say 2. And then we take 1. Then we come to 0. Since it's just one element, it's just like a simple print statement because it's just one element. So just get it in mind. 3 things you have to understand about nested loops. No matter how many nests you have, which is almost always impossible, but no matter how many nests you have, take into consideration the element that is being printed, take into consideration the block of code beneath the element that is being printed. Okay. So you have taken into consideration this element and the block of code between the element that's being printed. So just look at this as a print statement. Imagine it as a print statement, but just know for every element, it's supposed to finish the loop first. For every element, it's supposed to finish the loop first before it comes back to the next element. Keyword, the element, the first keyword. The second thing you need to understand is the block of code under the element. If it doesn't finish executing the block of code under the element, it will not come and change element. So that's why you see multiple appearances here of 0, because it has to finish all the elements of 0 down before it comes up. Okay. So let's go back to our normal quiz. And answer it. So 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 0, 2, 1. The answer is A. Yeah. So I hope you got it right. If in case you want another explanation, in case you have a question, let me know. Thanks.